Welcome to Community Conversations. I'm your host, Steve Mantis, and it's my pleasure today as my guest is Rebecca Johnson, newly re-elected councillor for Thunder Bay. Welcome, Rebecca.
Well, thanks, Steve. I appreciate you have the opportunity to come and chat.
Well, there's so much. We've already begun chatting, and there's so many things I want to talk to you about. Oh my gosh. But let's start with some of your own history. Did you grow up in Thunder Bay? Tell us a little bit about your own kind of personal background.
Right. Well, I grew up in West Fort. I mean, that's where I grew up most of my life. And as a teenager, then moved to Slate River because my father had an opportunity to either move to Montreal with the Canada car at that time or lose his job and stay in Thunder Bay. And he decided that we would go onto a dairy farm. And I said, oh my, what do I know about a dairy farm? And we went and we started, and I was 18 at the time. And I all of a sudden was a farmer, and it was kind of it was a great life. I married a gentleman from the Slate River area. I had 3 children. My husband unfortunately passed away very early in life. He was 25.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I then raised a family by myself, was a single mother. And I also took into my home a foster son who had cerebral palsy. So Chuck came into our life, and so I wound up raising 4 children by myself. It was there was ups and downs, let me tell you, Steve, over those years. But we were fortunate we had a community, and that's I think helped me doing the work I did today, because it's community, and when you have people working with each other to make an area of the community better, whether it's a neighborhood or whatever, it made me say, this is what's really important in life. And so I give back now to the community in different ways. And that's where it was. And I had various jobs over the years. I was a farmer. I raised swine. I raised beef cattle. That's how I started. And then from there, I worked for the Ministry of Agriculture and Food for a few years. I became the Chamber of Commerce president for 10 years. I moved to British Columbia for a couple of years, came back because that was not where I wanted to be. And so when I came back, somebody said to me, you should run for the city council. And I said, oh, I don't know, what am I going to do that for? I had already been on the school board for 12 years before I went to British Columbia. So I had an idea about a political life. But at the same point in time, when I was asked if I would run for city council, I said, why not? Either I'm going to win or I'm not going to win, so put your name in. And I was very fortunate. I topped the polls. That was the first time I put my name in, and it was a compliment to me at the time that it topped the polls. And here I am now 15 years later, and I'm still involved in city council. So when
were you first elected to city council?
I was in 2003, and that was there. I was away from the city from 2000 to late 2002. So I was gone for just over 2 years to British Columbia. I thought that would be where I would live the rest of my life. I was going to retire. Well, when I got out there and found that really wasn't my home, and I really thought about it a lot. Came back the summer before I came back to stay in the fall, and said, I don't know if I really want to be there anymore. It was lovely. I enjoyed it. British Columbia is a great province, warmer, of course, than Thunder Bay, but it wasn't home. And when I finally said, I got to come home, and I'm never going again. This is home. This is where I'm going to stay. I will die here, and I'm happy to contribute to the community in whatever way I can. It's important to me.
Well, there's a number of things I want to talk about, but just taking from what you talked about, the importance of community and the support that you experienced as a young mom, raising kids. I share that experience and believe really that is almost fundamental to quality of life, is to have a community of people that you get support from, but you also provide support to.
I think it's really important, Steve, and I think neighborhoods are becoming more and more important. So it's not just your family, but it's the totality of who you associate with. And as a community now, I mean, we had neighborhoods at one time. I grew up in neighborhoods, and whether it was in West Fort or in Slate River, people helped each other. And then we went through a period of, we didn't do that. Neighborhoods, I don't know, but something disappeared. Where did they go? I have no idea. But the feeling of neighborhoods is really what I'm getting at, more so than that you live beside each other. It's a feeling, it's a camaraderie, it's how do I help somebody? there was whether it's an incident in a community or a neighborhood, then you go, everybody goes out. Somebody passes away, you go and give them food. You might not even know them, but you help them out at those periods of time. And I see that neighborhood community starting to evolve again. People are saying, how do I help people? How do I assist them in whatever manner that is? And that's really what community is about. And I look back on what people did for me when I needed the help, and I think that we're doing that again, and that's very important.
Well, I totally agree with you. That as many of our viewers know, I ran for a provincial election in 2011.
Correct.
And I wanted to try to get folks that weren't involved in politics involved, and really spent a lot of time, or some time, in the Picton-Windsor Blucher area.
Right.
And after the election, I went back in the neighborhood to try to help build that sense of community in the neighborhood. And one of the things, we did education and training, and we brought in a fellow from Seattle. You might have even been at that workshop, I forget, who was working in the nonprofit sector to try to build that sense of community in particular neighborhoods in Seattle, and got hired on to do it on behalf of the municipality. And they created a department of neighborhoods. So kind of my question back to you is, how can the city and the city council that you're a member of, how can they support and strengthen neighborhoods coming together to have that community, that sense of support for each other?
That's a very good question. And I see that happening in a small way. Can it be better? Yes. But I see under the Crime Prevention Council that we currently have, which is made up of a number of organizations as well as individuals in the community. We have, within that, there is a neighborhood working group. Linda Bruins from Evergreen is certainly a catalyst with that. But we have now taken some of the work that she has done in the area of the Minnesota Park, for example, has taken that to Windsor area, have taken that to some other areas in the community. You never duplicate anything. You can't. Every neighborhood has its own needs, its own people, its own requirements, etc. But you take we'll call it the template, and say, how do we make this community work better together? And so that is in place, and it's working, but it's not doesn't have as much outreach as we would like it to have, but at least it's a starting point, so that we know that the city is working on neighborhoods now. I smile in a way, because I think of budgets. We're looking at, how do we budget for neighbors? How do we look at providing seed money, for example, whether it's the Blucher area, the Windsor area, Evergreen, doesn't matter. It could be Westford, it can be Current River, it doesn't really matter where it is, but do we give a little bit of seed money? Because once you give seed money, a community can do all kinds of things with a little bit of money. You don't need hundreds of thousands of dollars, you need little bits of money. Then you can make some things happen. And to me, that's really encouraging. So those are the things that we can do, and we've got the organization in place to make it happen. We just have to strengthen it a little bit more.
Rebecca, we have to take a short break. Please stay with us, and we're going to find out more about how older members of council, not that you're old.
No, that's okay.
Can really provide that balance with new members as well.
Sure.
Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Community Conversations. I'm your host, Steve Mantis, and my guest today is City Councillor Rebecca Johnson for the City of Thunder Bay. Welcome back, Rebecca.
Thanks, Steve.
So in the last segment, we were talking about community and trying to build community. And so we've just had our municipal election. The new council takes over in a couple of weeks' time, or I guess it's 2 weeks. Yep. You've been on council now 15 years. How do you see your role in the new council? We've got a number of new faces coming in. What's your view of the future here?
Right. I see it very positively. First, I just want to compliment and say thank you to the councillors that are going to be leaving council. I think that's important. They have put the ones that are leaving that have not been successful to get back on council, have put a lot of work, time, and commitment and energy into this community. So we have to give them the accolade. At the same point in time, we have 7 brand new people coming on. It is exciting. I am just so full of energy, and I'm really literally, as the saying goes, I'm pumped, because to me it's a new feeling of energy around the table. I have been meeting with all of the new councillors. I see myself personally in a mentor role, having the experience of being on council for 15 years. The 4 of the individuals have never had council experience before. So they have reached out, I feel as a compliment to me, and said, Rebecca, can I sit down with you? Help me, what do I have to do? Their energy is great. Their ideas are wonderful. Their political, we'll call it naivety, is there, but they will learn that. And so maybe those are the things I can help them with. You never finish learning anyway. Even after 15 years, as I explained to them, I'm still learning. There's always something new coming along, and so you have to do that. But I see myself as a mentor and saying, all right, and what I did do when the first person called me, I said, well, what do I talk to them about? So I literally sat down and brainstormed myself and said, okay, if I was a brand new person, knowing what I know, what would I want to know? And so that's what I went with, and I've adjusted that as I talk to each individual, and I'm giving them more of the political components of being a city councillor. Then this is when we will meet and all the rest of it. They will learn that. But what does it mean politically? Because as I said, 4 of them have never been in politics before, so they're saying, I'm not quite sure, what does this mean? And it's very interesting, the discussions we're having, but I'm very confident in their ability. I feel, as I say, energized by them. They're going to bring some new ideas, and that'll be very benefit our community in the long run. I think it's great. I'm very excited, very excited.
And so you've been very connected in the community in many ways.
Yep.
And so as a mentor, I wonder where's the balance? You know, I know myself, we're of a similar age, and you know, I've been around a long time. New people coming in might say, well, what about this, Steve, or what about that? You know, and for me, my experience informs my opinions.
Of course.
And so a certain route may not have worked when I tried it. But do I say, don't try that because it didn't work? No. Because things have changed. They may be successful.
Yes, they will. I think you have to be open to that. I think you look at if you are not I feel myself as let me put it this way, I feel myself as a change agent. If I was stuck in whatever mindset I was, that's not progressive. I don't want to ever go there. I read, I'm constantly talking with people. I'm out in the community a lot. I need to know what's going on. And I see that as an individual, sure, you try things. And I look at it, sometimes you win, sometimes you don't win. And sometimes, you know, if you don't win, you say, maybe there's a way I can I feel passionate about whatever it happens to be. Maybe there's a way I can bring it back. Or you know what, maybe it isn't the time, and you have to let it go. But I'm very open to change. If somebody new comes on council and says, this is an idea I have, and I'm thinking, oh geez, we tried that 15 years ago, it didn't work. I'm saying, okay, how do you think that it's gonna work today? Let's take a look at it, because what happened 15 years ago might not have been the right time. Today in 2019, which we're closely coming to, it might be the right time for that. I have no idea, but I would never want to ever say, well, we did that before, it didn't work. No, I don't agree with that. I think you have to be open, and things take time, and that's one of the things when I'm mentoring the new counselors, I say, no, sorry, you might not be able to get whatever it is you want tomorrow, meaning tomorrow being whatever date that is tomorrow. Sometimes things take time to do that. But I feel very open to whatever suggestions they have, and it doesn't matter whether it was there before. No, let's take a new look at it, and I think it's important to do that.
So as a change agent, I know you're interested in seeing more diversity in politics, and particularly around gender equity, to get more of a balance between men and women. tell me a little bit about your work in that area.
Well, I, as well as, I guess I was a catalyst, I'll be honest, back 5 years ago. I talked to Judy Davies at the time, and Judy and I decided that it would be a very good thing to, because we both felt very strongly about getting more women involved in politics particularly. She has 2 young daughters who wanted, and she feels very strongly about the fact that there would need to be role models for her young daughters. So we decided, and I said, okay, Judy, this is what we're going to do. I have a network out there, and Judy was new to the community, and I said, I'll bring a few people, women, around a table. Let's talk about women and getting involved and having them run or involved in some way in politics. So we started, it was 5 years ago, and we have evolved now to Women in Politics. We are a leading group in Canada. We have now over 70 people involved in our organization. We now have, in the last municipal election, for example, have elected more women in Northwestern Ontario than have ever been elected before.
Congratulations.
We're feeling that we're making steps forward. Thunder Bay, we weren't as successful. We still have 3 women on council. Women make up 52% of the population. So why are we not 52% at board tables? Why are we not 52% at around the city council table? We bring a different lens to decision making as a female, and I think that we need to have that. It's very important. Will we get to 50%? That would be a goal, but each step forward, we're getting more women. We have more women on the Port Authority now. We have more women that are seeking and saying, I want to step up. That is really important. It's difficult for women, though, Steve, in all honesty, to put their name forward. Mm-hmm. It costs money. They're generally the caregivers in their family, whether it's the caregiver at the youth and the child or the caregiver to their parents. Mm-hmm. And they have this time in between, or they're building careers. And so it's difficult for women to step forward. The other thing is, maybe if we don't want to step forward, how do we support women that want to do that? And it's there's a lot of issues that we have to work with. But we had an event a couple of weeks ago that was very positive, and we know that the number of women are saying, I want to be part of this. We had more women running this time. They weren't all successful. I call it that they weren't successful. They didn't get enough votes. Mm-hmm. Because they were successful in the fact that they stepped forward and said, I'm putting my name on the ballot. That is wonderful. Mm-hmm. And we need more of that, because we have to have a diversity. Diversity is not just men and women. It's diversity in cultures. It's diversity in accessibility needs, all of that. So that's what you need around a table to make the best decision for your community. If we have just one gender, if we have no one that has an idea about accessibility, that's not making the right decisions, I don't think. So you have to have that real diverse community and back to the neighborhood kind of a thing. That's really important around the table.
We have to take another short break. Please stay with us, and we'll find out about some of the challenges coming up for the City of Thunder Bay. Welcome back to Community Conversations. I'm your host, Steve Mantis, and my guest today is Rebecca Johnson, newly re-elected to the City Council of Thunder Bay. Welcome back, Rebecca.
Thanks, Steve. I'm really pleased to be here. Yeah.
Well, I'm having fun,
yes,
so that's great.
Having a conversation.
So, priorities and challenges in the next 4 years. I mean, I don't want to limit it to 4 years because life goes on beyond the political cycle, but what do you see as some of the challenges and areas you want to focus on in this next term on council?
Well, I think for me, and I'm only speaking for me because I'm sure that if you had 13 of us, which are representative of council, but I think some of the same things would follow through. And it's our social wellness. Our community is hurting in many ways. And so whether it's poverty, whether it's drugs, whether it's other addictions, the suicides, the racism, et cetera, that's social wellness to me. We just can put it all in the crime rates. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Those are issues that we really have to come to some resolution of. And I think you're going to put up a picture maybe of me sitting on top of Mount McKay. And I was sitting there. I didn't know the picture had been taken. And when we did, when it did, I was sitting there seriously looking out over the city and saying, what is our future as a community? It had nothing to do with being a city councillor up there at the time. But I really look at and say, where are we going with that whole social wellness? We need to stop where we are right now. We go in cycles, and we're going in cycles, and we're going in cycles, but we're not stopping and saying, how do we stop? How do we listen to the young people? Where are we going to go as a future in our community? So this whole social wellness is a huge area, and it's not going to get resolved overnight. There's no way that's going to happen. But we have to stop the cycle. We really need to stop and really listen to each other and start putting dollars as well as conversations. And some of the conversations are tough. They're really difficult to have. But if we don't have those conversations, Steve, we're not going to resolve this. Then we have to put some money in, whether it's money, a little bit of seed money into communities, into neighborhoods. We have to start looking at how do we assist people, how do we educate, how do we have people, some of our Indigenous youth are not graduating. Why aren't they graduating? So let's stop that and say, why aren't they graduating? Go backwards and say, what do we have to put in place to make that happen? They're the largest in this jails, the Indigenous youth. What is wrong with this picture? So somewhere we've got to fix that. So I see that as a huge issue that has to be stopped and take a look at it. I mentioned to you before we started the show today, I was at the Feathers of Hope a week ago, and I listened to the youth in the north that have come down to Thunder Bay to try to find solutions, and they're saying, please help us, we need help. They need their community centers open. They need to have their education finished. They want to graduate. They want to be citizens of the world. So what are we doing to help them? We're not doing the right things because they're committing suicides, and it's increasing. How does a 9-year-old decide they're going to commit suicide? Steve, something's wrong. So we got to do that. So that's one area. And I'm feeling very passionate about that. That is something I've been working on for many years, and I feel very strongly about. The other one is fiscal. And I see that our community has reached the average citizen in our community is saying, I can't absorb any more taxes. Will we ever come in at zero? I don't know if that's the right thing, but what is the rate of inflation? Maybe we can keep our taxes to that, because the seniors are leaving their homes. They can't afford to eat. That's sad. Now, something's wrong with this picture as well. And our youth are going out, the youth are going to food banks because they can't afford to eat. So we have to start and look at how can we make our community more affordable to live in. We know that we are taxed high, business taxes are high. So somewhere along the line we have to stop and figure this one out as well. And that is something that to me is really, really important. There's no magic answers, but I really truly believe as an individual councillor that we can no longer provide all the services that we are providing now. There's ways that we have to look at cutting back that doesn't necessarily hurt anybody, but we have to look at doing business in a different way. And I think that we're at the point of really having to look at that. We can't keep nickel and diming the budget to get where we need to do. We have to look at services. We have to provide things in a different way. Maybe we have to cut back. Our revenues are down, so why are they down? We don't have enough businesses. So there's a whole bunch of things that we have to really seriously look at, and it's a struggle. There's no question about that, but we have to have a better way of doing things.
Well, and I've asked a number of councillors over the last couple years about budget time. In a way, this is oftentimes where the rubber meets the road.
Correct.
And it looks like, half or more of our budget is going to, police and EMS and, safety stuff. And I saw in the election we just had, so many candidates are saying community safety is number one and we'll get more money for police if they need it. And I'm kind of going, well, what are the causes of crime, and how do we take that money, that $100,000 for each policeman or whatever it is? We talked about community building, $6,000 in the Picton Windsor area. Year over year, there's a 35% reduction in crime. For $6,000, how many police or how many communities can benefit from one police? Like, how do you make those decisions when you're working on the budget? Like, that's that's one of the tough jobs for counselors.
It is. Budget time's very tough. It's very, very difficult. But I remember a police chief many years ago saying, and he provided a PowerPoint presentation, and I remember, I'll never forget this because it had such an impact on me. He said, this is where the cost of policing is, and it was going up and up and up, and I identified that. And the prevention area, we'll call it, is going down and down and down. His comment was, the cost needs to come down, the prevention needs to go up. And I've never forgotten that, because I thought, you know what, he's right. Because if we just, what are we going to do? Put a police person on every corner? That's not going to solve it, because in the middle of the block there's going to be something that's not going to work right. So that's not the answer. But we've got to start taking the dollars and saying, I'm not saying we shouldn't have a safe community and we have to have policing. I'm not pulling that away. But how do we make those $6,000 pockets? And it's not a lot of money, Steve, but a little bit here and a little bit there. So the prevention starts climbing up. That's, to me, where we need to go. So the policing then comes down, because all we're doing is creating the cycle, and that's not working. So we have to look at things differently. So I'm all for this. Let's put more money into the prevention end of it, cut the policing down, but also look at the fact that we have to balance that some way.
We need to have more time, Rebecca. We're out of time.
Sorry.
If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Well, they can do that through email or telephone. I try to keep ahead of that as best I possibly can.
We'll put that on the screen.
Sure.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to have you back.
Anytime.
Thanks for watching. Stay safe, and we'll see you again next week.